All right, hello, and thank you everyone for attending our rain garden workshop here at the the Richland Park branch of the Nashville Public Library. I'd like to thank Richland Park Library for hosting us today for our presentation on green infrastructure solutions to pollution, and also hosting a newly constructed rain garden outside that we'll be planting this afternoon after the presentation. Also like to thank Nashville Metro Water Services for all their help in building this rain garden. They came out a couple weeks ago and dug out the garden bed and helped build up the berm, which was a great help. My name is Joe, and I'm with the Cumberland River Compact. I'll start by introducing the Compact. We're a 501c3 environmental nonprofit working to enhance the health of the Cumberland River and its tributaries through action, education, and collaboration. So, our service area includes the entire Cumberland River Basin. So, we're looking at a lot of land here. It's over almost 700 miles long, covers 18,000 square miles of land, and over 3 million people depend on the basin for drinking, swimming, and recreation. It starts in Kentucky on the right side of the map. I think I got a pointer. Up in Kentucky, and where's the pointer? In the southern Appalachia. And that's where the headwaters are, and it flows all the way through Cookeville, Nashville, Clarksville, and empties on the left side of the screen into the Ohio River back in Kentucky. So the way we treat our water here affects the quality downstream. So it's important that we ensure our water resources are clean and abundant, because the Ohio River flows into the Mississippi, and we all know where that goes. So it's important that we're thinking about how we're treating our water here, because a lot of people depend on it downstream. So our goal is to give people the tools to be smart, impactful stewards of their watershed, and to constructively partner with governments, communities, and other organizations to address the most pressing water and environmental issues in our region. Our work addresses both the root causes of water quality issues and strives for a climate-resilient future. So these are some of the buckets of our work that we work in. We have a lot of different avenues that we like to focus on. We have a whole education program where we go into schools, K through 12, and we have different types of workshops. We'll get kids in the stream looking for macroinvertebrates and pollution-sensitive organisms. We have big restoration projects. We just removed a dam at Sam Davis and recreated flow through that river. It was a man-made dam that was kind of backing all the river up. So that was a big project we just got done. We do a lot of major and minor bank stabilization work across the basin. That's going in and looking for eroded stream banks and planting that and kind of grading it a little bit depending on how eroded it is, and restoring that so it's not eroding and just getting more and more sediment into the water. We have an urban waters program, which is what we're here doing today. We build rain gardens and install green infrastructure practices across the city. I'm going to go into detail about what those different green infrastructure practices are later on. We also have a working lands program where we partner with farms and we get them certified as river-friendly farms and start using more environmentally friendly practices like no-till farming and stuff like that. So, like I said, we have a huge service area, and that is a part of the Cumberland River watershed. Now, what is a watershed? So it's an area of land that drains or sheds all of its water or runoff from the rain or snow melting to stream or river, which flow into a common outlet such as a lake, ocean, or in our case, the Cumberland River. So all that water in that map that I showed you, all that water falling on all that land, it all empties into the Cumberland at some point, whether that be directly or through a tributary like Mill Creek or Richland Creek. So in urbanized areas, that water isn't absorbing like it is in this picture. You got a lot of trees, a lot of green. That water, most of that water is getting absorbed before it actually enters the river. But in urban areas, that water is just flowing directly into that river, and on its way, it's picking up a lot of harmful pollutants like oil and sediment, nutrients, trash. I'm sure you know about the trash. And that poses a threat to our ecological health of the streams. And since all the water is fed into a common outlet, the contamination in one stream affects the entire watershed. So let's take a look at some modern problems affecting water quality. So there's two types of pollution. There's point source and there's non-point source pollution. Point source is something that's pretty easily identifiable. You can point at it. Think of like a factory pipe here on the left, something that you can point at and say that's where the pollution's coming from. And because it's easy to identify, it's regulated by the EPA. It wasn't prior to 1972, and before that there was little protection and enforcement of pollution. The Cuyahoga River down here used to catch on fire all the time. It actually wasn't a big deal to like the public until 1969. It just caught on fire again. It was a huge fire, and everyone, like the media, got involved, and it kind of spawned it spawned the creation of the Clean Water Act. But it's kind of funny because it used to happen all the time, and no one really paid attention to it. And there was nothing nothing special about the 13th fire. It's just the one that everyone caught on to. So yes, this is all regulated just because we got to identify it. Now, what our work focuses on is non-point source pollution, because it's difficult to regulate because you don't really, there's no single source. It could come from a number of different sources. So it also represents the most significant source of pollution overall in the country. Generally, it results from stormwater runoff, precipitation, drainage, and hydrologic modifications. So this is where most of our urban waters work focuses on. We want to collect that stormwater and keep those pollutants out of our streams. And you're probably thinking, like, it's stormwater. I thought it was natural. Why is it so bad? It is natural, but as we've developed and changed the landscape, it's become more problematic and unnatural in how it affects the environment. Since we've been developing these previously naturalized landscapes, we've installed a lot of what we call impervious or impermeable surfaces. Those are parking lots, those are roofs, driveways, sidewalks, anything where water can't infiltrate in. And what happens when we do that is that water, not only is it picking up pollutants on its way, but it's not being absorbed, so it's flying into our rivers and streams. That's why we have increased flooding. We really want to focus on eliminating the amount of impervious surfaces across the city. Mass urbanization without environmental considerations poses a huge threat to our water systems. And as it rains on those parking lots, most of them are asphalt. That's a petroleum product, and it sheds a lot. If you look around an asphalt parking lot, if you look towards the grass, if you can find where the water is being directed, you'll see it like a pile of sediment, or it'll look like dirt, but it's actually the actual asphalt. And if that's not controlled and collected properly, that's going to end up in our rivers and streams. Or it's going to go directly into a sewer drain. And in Nashville, we have a combined sewer system. So what that means, missed a slide. What that means is when the water enters the storm drain, on the left here, you can see. So it enters the storm drain, and that is directly connected to our sanitary sewer overflow, like when we flush a toilet. So it all goes into one pipe, and since we've been developing so much, that used to not be an issue, but as we laid down those impervious surfaces, our sewer system gets overrun. So during heavy events, it will overflow. I think I have a better example. It'll overload the system, and they have outfall pipes in the Cumberland, and that sewage will get backed up and deposited directly into the Cumberland River. Now, we're not the only city that has this. This isn't like a new, it's an old problem. But Nashville's working to disconnect these and create more of a separate sewer system. That way, we don't have to worry about any sewage getting into the river. It's separated in a separate pipe. Now that's expensive. New York is putting a lot of money into it. Chicago has this you should look it up, massive sewer pipe that's like 60 by 60. There's a guy that looks like a little ant. It's the biggest pipe ever, and they're building this huge reservoir to hold their stormwater so it can be treated, and it can hold like billions of gallons. You should look at that too. Like, they're under construction. It's huge, huge. So obviously we don't want sewage in our water. The best way would be to disconnect it, but in addition to installing these green infrastructure practices that I'll get into. Let's talk about our solutions and get away from the bad stuff, because it's not all cryptic. So green infrastructure in general attempts to restore the hydrological balance in urban areas through the use of stormwater management practices and nature. It uses retention and treatment, and the benefits extend far beyond just these, but flood prevention is a big one. Urban heat reduction, if y'all are familiar with the heat island effect, cities are generally a couple degrees warmer than wooded areas, because all these black rooftops, all this pavement, asphalt absorbs the heat. That's not good for health of us, our health, and the health of the insects and bugs and animals that live in the city. It increases water quality through the treatment of stormwater, and it provides ecological habitat, which is my favorite part. So here are some examples of green infrastructure. So it's pretty broad. We're not going to get into all of them. We'll mostly focus on the ones on top. We have bioretention cells and swales I'll get into. They're pretty much gardens, but they serve a deeper purpose. Riparian plantings I'll talk about. Those are plantings along the rivers. D-Pave we'll get into. That's a program of ours. Rain gardens, which you'll get to plant later on today. Rain barrels, which I'm sure you're familiar with. You can connect them right to your downspout, and they hold water for you. You can have one at home. We actually sell them sometimes biannually. We'll do a rain barrel sale that you can get from us. There's also cisterns, which are giant rain barrels. There's one at First Horizon Park where the Nashville Sounds play. They have a lot of green infrastructure practices. They have a green roof, too. A green roof is a vegetated roof that it helps reduce the heat island effect, because you're not absorbing that sunlight onto a black rooftop. But it also has plants and provides habitat for pollinators in heavily urbanized areas, and it absorbs stormwater. They have a whole waterproofing membrane underneath. A blue roof doesn't have any plants. It just has it kind of holds water like a cistern-ish, but it just holds the water and lets it slowly infiltrate, because that's another one of the problems. Plants help absorb it, but cisterns and rain barrels help it slowly get infiltrated back instead of overloading the system. So it's good to store water rather than letting it run right into our sewer systems. And that way it's not picking up pollutants on its way. Permeable pavement, which you can look at permeable concrete, permeable asphalt that you can just pour. You can pour water right over it and it just sinks right in. It's like magic. And then there's those pavers that you saw a picture of with the hexes, where you have grass coming up. Dry wells are another one that you could do at home. And the constructed stormwater wetlands are the number one. They're the most expensive to install, but they're also the best, because they have, you're building a wetland, so you're building a huge environment. There is one in Franklin. You should definitely check it out. I can get you the details about that, but you can walk through it. They have like education signage up. Very cool. Huge swampy area where you're directing stormwater into, and it's planted with wetland plants. There's river otters in the one in Franklin. They just came and hang out sometime, which is so cool. I want to see them really bad. And then there's blue herons, all kind of. It's just a great way to provide habitat and deal with stormwater at the same time. But let's get into the top couple. So bioretention cells, what are they? They're typically larger projects, up to 1,000 plus square feet, and they involve engineers and architects to kind of stamp the approval and come up with the plans, because they're bigger areas. But they're vegetated depressions, similar to rain gardens. So they're going to be depressions, holes in the ground, typically around parking lots. You'll see them. You've definitely seen them around. You may just not have known what it was, but essentially they'll be connected to a parking lot, and all the water will be directed into it, and it'll fill up with water. They'll have an overflow pipe, which I can show you rather than tell you. So if the water gets too high, it'll overflow directly into the sewer system. But they're stock full of native plants that love water. So they not only help absorb the water, but their roots filter out the pollutants that it's carrying. You have a little inlet on the left, usually lined with river stone. That way, when the water's rushing in, it'll hit that stone, deposit any of that asphalt or sediment that it's picking up, and slowly infiltrate rather than flying right in. And it helps with erosion around that area too. And the difference, unlike rain gardens, they typically use engineered soil, so like rain garden soil, super absorptive. You want to do like a whole soil amendment, dig out all the natural soil and replace it. Sometimes it's sand and compost. Typically they'll have a little rock layer underneath, gravel bed to help that water like slowly trickle down to. But they do a great job. There's another one at the First Horizon Park. I just went to a Sounds game, so I saw all their great infrastructure. So they have a lot there. And right when you walk in through the outfield entrance, you'll see it on the right. We are actually maintaining that garden, and we may have volunteer events with plantings coming up in the fall or so. So if you want to check it out and learn more about a larger bioretention cell, keep an eye out for that. I think I have more pictures of like actual ones. Yeah. So yeah, you can. This would be more of a swale. The difference between a cell and a swale is a cell holds the water. A swale kind of is elongated like this and directs the water to a source. But they're pretty similar in their design. I thought I had another picture. But yeah, that's typically what you'll see, either in the middle of the parking lot or in the corner, depending on where the water is flowing. Now, riparian zones. You've seen these before. They're essentially just vegetated buffers separating land and the river. So same deal. You don't want to mow or pave up to a creek. You think that would be, I've seen a lot of creeks where there's pavement straight up to it and there's parking, like people park above it. Some areas in Nashville, they've paved over the creek. You don't want to do any of that. We want a 50-foot buffer like native vegetation between any development or mowing and the creek, minimum. Honestly, in the Cumberland, you see that a lot through Shelby Park area, pretty much from Shelby, for the most part, to downtown. It's a pretty thick buffer, which is great. That's part of the reason why that whole stretch is fishable and swimmable, because we've done a lot of work to make sure it's clean. And yeah, having that buffer allows the rain to slow down, stormwater to slow down while it's flowing into it, and it filters out all the pollutants. And the canopy even slows down water. Planting trees is an example of green infrastructure. They kind of have a dual purpose. So when the rain hits the leaves, it trickles down slowly, and then the roots itself, once it lands, it'll absorb the water too. So it's like a win-win, slowing the water down as it falls and then absorbing it when it hits the ground. Cute little photo of riparian zones. On the left, you'll see no riparian zone, all that oil flying right into the river. On the right, we'll capture all that and filter out all those pollutants before it hits the river. Depave. So this is my favorite program that we have at the Compact. So as you may be aware, Nashville is expanding rapidly with development. I bet you every corner you turn down on your way here, there's some kind of construction going on. And where that population growth occurs, an increase in man-made impervious surfaces always follows. So a lot of pavement is coming in. So as we gain impervious surfaces, we're actively losing water-absorbing surfaces that are essential for clean water and aquatic habitat. So the goal of our DPAVE program is to restore man-made impervious surfaces back to their natural state. Now, benefits, I'm sure you could tell me them. Pretty self-explanatory here. Essentially the goal is to find a parking lot that may be too large or just underutilized. Partner, and a lot of these are at churches or schools that we've done in the past. So if you know of your church or maybe a school that you know of that would be interested in this, we'd love it. So we essentially take that parking lot or part of it, rip out all the concrete, and then replace that, or asphalt, and replace that with healthy soil. And we'll turn it into, a garden, a park, maybe just plant trees. We did a playground at one church that was really awesome. And this has numerous benefits. It allows that water that was previously falling there and just flying into our sewer systems to naturally sink into the soil, and slowing it down and filtering it out. Now I have some photos of our past projects. So this is Cave Spring in Shelby Park. I'm not sure if you're familiar. It's by the community center, and it's really historic. So in the back, in that little cave, it's not a very large cave. My pointer does not want to go on screen. They laid concrete down. It's a natural spring that's always flowing, and they laid concrete down right over it. Down in right next to the circle thing is where the spring is flowing out of, kind of just bubbling out through the cracks in the concrete. So we came in and removed the concrete and kind of built a channel bed with volunteers. We had a great group. There was 40 of them, and they were hauling wheelbarrows up that hill, but they were resilient. Got the work done. No complaints. And then we just planted it, put some pavers down. It looks really nice. The plants are doing really well. This was a couple years ago. And we kind of redirected the stream to flow more like it was naturally before. Do I have another picture? No. So if you have any if you know of any property owners or churches or schools that could use less parking lot and more green space, we'd be happy to partner with them and talk about what they envision for the space, and we could bring volunteers in and crack up the concrete and get it done. We have this propose a project form on our website, so would love to get some more projects in. We're always looking for them. Great. So let's talk about rain gardens now. That's what y'all are here for anyway. So like I said, they're very similar to bioretention cells, except they're smaller. Typically, we like to see them at 100 to 200 square feet. They're still depressed areas, similar to a bioretention, but they use native soils for the most part. Of course, you can bring in engineered soil, but since they're not getting as much water, all you have to do is a little percolation test and make sure that it's not super compacted soil and it will drain well. You can have these in your home as well. Today, you'll kind of learn how to build one at your home. Definitely an easy day job with a couple of friends and some shovels. It's really all you need. And they typically don't include the big under drains or any engineers or architects. And what we like to do is attach them to a downspout, which is kind of what we're doing for this one. We haven't attached it yet, but I'll show you our vision doing that. You can just get a French drain and direct the water from your rooftop right into the garden, so it'll absorb that water and filter out any pollutants. And yes, they support healthy habitats. They're pollinator friendly. Most of the rain garden plants we choose are flowers, so the pollinators love that. And they're all native plants, which I'll tell you why that's important in a moment. So yes, here's a better example of what I was talking about. Gutters and downspouts are great to connect. It's also great, the plants themselves, they have much deeper root systems than turf grass. And they have a berm, which you might have saw on your way in. Essentially, all the dirt you're digging out of your rain garden, you're going to use it to build up a berm on the opposite side of where the water's coming in. So the water's flowing here on the left to the right, and that berm is kind of a mound that will, when the water, during a heavy rain event, the water's flying in, it'll hit that mound but stay in. So it captures the water and lets it sink in. Now you will leave an outlet to where, kind of like the drain, like whole drain system, you'll just leave an outlet in the berm where it fills up. It'll just go down the path that it was going before you put the rain garden in, just so you don't have it overflowing with water and backing up. So let's talk about how to build a rain garden. So we like them to be about 10 feet away from your home or your foundation. Don't plant in the right-of-way in Nashville or anywhere probably, just because that's typically where the water pipe is, and if they have to do any work on the right-of-way, they'll just come in and dig it up because they have the right. And got to fix the pipes. And follow the flow of stormwater. So you can typically see if you have stormwater issues. You can see in the grass, there might not be grass growing in that area because its water is just ripping it and flowing through it. You can typically see where the stormwater is flowing in your yard. But you don't want to build a rain garden where the water is actually pooling. You want to build it uphill from where that water pools. If you build it where it's pooling, then you're going to create like a home for mosquitoes. No one wants to do that. So if you build it uphill, you actually catch the water here, and you will solve the pooling issue back where it was, because you're capturing the water uphill from that. And like I said, consider attaching your downspout. So our bean shape is our most used garden design. That's what we like. That's like our favorite design, just because it is wider than it is long, and it captures naturally. Like it's like big arms grabbing all the water. 100 to 200 square feet is good, and then you want that berm in the back. But they can be any shape and size. We couldn't do a bean here because we had kind of a constrained space. So you can do whatever size you really want to. They could be any shape, just as long as you have each component with the inlet and the berm. You do want the garden bed to be flat, so the water, if you can build it on a slope, just not too big of a slope. And if you do that, you want it to be flat, so the water is being held in there. So here is this is part of the planning phase. This is a garden we dug out in Laverne. We had a partnership with the city of Laverne, their stormwater department. And we built 7 rain gardens in 3 hours across 7 different homeowners' properties. It was pretty awesome. We had a great group of volunteers on it too. So this is one of them. They already had a French drain system just pushing the water out. So we kind of designed it around that. Now, I typically like to put stonework where the inlet's coming in. Remember I was talking about the bioretention cells? That allows the water to slow down. It'll hit that river stone and trickle in rather than eroding and flying right in to the garden. And it also holds that sediment in. This is another example. You can bury your French drain if you want to do that much work. It's not too much work. You don't have to do it this far away. This is probably like 50 feet. But you can bury the French drain and then have it come out because the rain garden will be depressed. So that's finished. The previous photo I showed you, that's the stonework laid down and all planted in the berm, everything done. So next step is to dig after you've chosen your spot, your shape. I like to spray paint it before, as you saw. You can actually, the best way to do it is to get like 5 or 6 stakes and then tie a string around them. Then you can like rotate and move the string and shape it. And then when you have it the way you want it, just spray paint all around and then pull that up, dig it out. But if you're ever digging anywhere, always call 811 so you don't run into any utilities underground. It's better safe than sorry on that. And they'll come out and mark, no problem, like within a couple days, typically. All you really need is gloves, shovels, pickaxes, if you have a rocky, area, and then the hand shovels. And then all that soil, just make sure as you know where the berm's going to be, so you don't do too much, like double your work. Because as you dig, you can build that berm up. And I would take off the first layer of grass, kind of keep, if you can, keep the grass together and set it aside, and then build up the berm, and then put that grass right back on top, because it's gonna grow back anyway. So if you have the patches of grass, you can kind of build that up. And you're going to go down about 6 to 8 inches in your flower bed, and make sure as you're going down that'll be flat. Very important. So there's the outline. That's me. This is another project in Laverne. And then that's the volunteers digging it out. Typically start on the edges so you have the shape and then keep going. They did a really good job. That guy was a landscaper, so he really took charge there. And you can see they're putting all the dirt in the back so they don't have to move another pile back there. So that's the flat finished garden bed, about 6 inches deep. And then that's the finished project. We have the river stone lining in. This way in the photo is a whole house with a downspout directed right into there. She didn't have a French drain yet, but she was going to get one. So step 3, once you have it dug out, you're going to plant it. So we love to choose native plants. Please only use native plants. They're so great for so many different reasons. They support pollinators, and they're naturally adapted to this area, so it's just better to use them, and they're more resilient than other plants. And they have deeper root structures, which I think I have it in the next photo. No, not yet. But they have deeper root structures than most other grasses that, Kentucky bluegrass, anything like that. Very small root structures, don't absorb a lot of water. Essentially, in my opinion, just another impermeable space. But I'm not going to trash turf grass too much, hopefully. And then you're going to mulch it. I'll get into the plants more in a minute. So the cheapest option is pine straw, which is what we have out there. It works. It doesn't do great at suppressing weeds, but it works. The best option would be shredded hardwood. That can get a little more expensive. And depending on who you go through, you can go get some from Home Depot, but you have to get a lot of bags if you're doing 100 square feet. You can order a drop-off from a local mulch company. There's Living Earth. Compost company has good compost and mulch mixes. And I would always consider using Riverstone. It's pretty. You don't have to. But if you have like major stormwater issues, there's a lot of water coming through, then I would definitely use the Riverstone to slow that down, because you're going to get a lot of erosion, and you might even wash out the plants that you planted. So that is the finished garden. Now we didn't have any shrubs here, but if you get shrubs like larger bushes, you can plant them directly on the berm. We're going to do that today. That way, planting on that mound, the roots will actually hold that berm together so it doesn't get eroded away. And we're going to do that with the bushes we have today. I typically like to do a couple bushes on the berm. Depending on how big it is, you do 7 or 8 grasses. River oat is my favorite because it can grow anywhere, full sun, part shade, and it loves the water. It's river oat. And then choose. We have a great resource called our Rain Garden Manual with a bunch of different native plants that you can use depending on if you're in full sun or you're part shade. So you can totally plant in the shade. You don't have to. If you have a really shady home, you can still have a pretty garden. And then I like asters and coreopsis. Let's see if I can get into that. This is a bioretention cell we did. Similar to a rain garden, same shape. We connected, this is at Millersville Elementary School. We connected the downspouts and there's stone, you just can't see it because it's pretty grown. It's another rain garden finished. This one we did a couple weeks ago at Warner Parks Nature Center. You should go check it out. It's so pretty. We do have bushes you can see in the berm, the little sticks. Those are button bush we transplanted over from across the field there. And then river oat in the back. These are all the same plants that we will be planting today. River oat, baptisia, and asters. All really great native plants. And I thought I had a native plant thing. I might pull it up in a moment. But But another thing on the plants, not sure if you're familiar, but Doug Tallamy he's an entomologist, and he's identified what he calls keystone species, and we can kind of double dip here with our ecological environment. So keystone species are species that support the highest number of pollinators, caterpillars, bees, because are specialist caterpillars and specialist bees, which another word for that is picky bees. They're bees that only like one type of plant, and they won't go to another plant, and caterpillars that only live on one type of tree. Oaks are caterpillar's favorite, or specialist caterpillar's favorite tree. And yeah, so you'll see a lot of these specific caterpillars only going to this one tree, but other caterpillars will go to oaks too. So it's like, rather plant these because it supports all of them. Coreopsis and Helianthus. Helianthus is a sunflower that supports the most specialist bees. Can't forget that one. And we do have woodland native sunflowers here, so you can use our list and the keystone species list to kind of double up on your benefits. Asters are another great one, and I believe asters, coneflower, Helianthus, Coreopsis. Those are great, and you can plant all of those in rain gardens as well. They have much deeper root structures. If you look at all this grass around, if you look at a diagram, which I will find definitely in this presentation, their root structures are very thin, shallow. They only go 4, 6, maybe 6 inches, and we're mowing it constantly, so they don't really have a chance to get deep. If you look at any of these plants in this rain garden, we're looking at feet deep. Not only do their roots themselves absorb more water because they're bigger, but as they grow, they're creating more air pockets in the soil, and opening up that soil to allowing the soil itself to be more water absorbent. So they're much better for water quality, and they slow down the water much faster than turf grass. But yes, that concludes the presentation.